I'm curious
Okay.
how much you know about the origins of the Kellogg Company.
I know nothing about the origins of the Kellogg
Oh,
Company.
okay, good. Okay. This is fun one. So we're going to go to the 1850s through to sort of like the like early 1900s. In
Uh-huh.
this time, um, what we're seeing is drastic changes in the American food system. The
Uh-huh.
way that we procure food, the way that we distribute it, the way that we prepare it and consume it. Prior to the 1850s, most people in America don't live in cities. They live in a variety of villages, farms, etc. Um, and breakfast isn't there's no such thing as a breakfast food. There is just
Right.
food. Um, you don't wake up and have a very special, different thing than you would have later. You need a big, hearty meal because you're probably going to go out and do a bunch of manual labor.
Yeah.
As we move into more industrialized forms of food and food distribution, we have retained these diets that are kind of omnivorous. And so you read articles of people saying you're just as likely to have a steak and a slice of pie for breakfast as you are for dinner at this time.
Hmm.
But your access to those is accelerating like crazy.
Right.
And so dyspepsia, which is sort of a
Great name.
blanket
Great word,
term
rather. Yeah.
being used for all sorts of digestive upsets, becomes sort of the health crisis of the day that everybody frets about, in the way that now you just offhand hear people say, well, the obesity crisis. This was the dyspepsia crisis that has arisen out of nowhere and is ruining
Yeah.
lives.
The
And
gurgling was deafening across the United States. Just an absolute roar of malcontent stomachs.
um, and so everybody's kind of trying to figure out, they're eager for cures. They're looking for what to do differently.
Hmm.
And that is where Dr. Kellogg steps in and says,
I feel like the doctor term was just thrown around for 100 years. Everybody's a doctor.
yeah, I
What'd you do?
don't,
You graduated from ninth grade. Well, you're a doctor.
maybe so. It does seem like it was kind of like, it does seem like it was a little easier to become. You sort of had to be
Yeah.
intellectually curious and white and male.
Yeah.
Um, and then you could probably get in, no problem.
Sure.
Um, So Dr. Kellogg says that the reason why not just our digestive problems, that all sorts of societal ills are based upon the diet, um, and that we are not eating in what he would call sort of like a biologic lifestyle or a biologic,
Hmm.
what do you say, biologic living is the thing that he was like most worried about.
Okay.
Um, and to him, he said, we need to go back to eating things for our weaker constitution because we're overloading it. And when we
Hmm.
overload our diets and our digestion becomes skewed, that doesn't just relate to burping. That relates to mental health issues, that relates to
Right.
violence, and that relates to the number one thing he felt the strongest about:
Which was.
masturbation.
I mean, this wouldn't be a Strange Coordinates episode if we didn't touch on some sort of pruriens around sex.
I, I, you know what? Sorry, but I'm not
There's
sorry.
no sorry, not sorry. No.
So basically, he designed an entire diet that was super, super simple and pared down. And he had like these like health clinics and spas that people would go to, and
Uh-huh.
specific diets he made for everybody. And that's where Kellogg's cornflakes comes from.
Uh-huh.
Cornflakes were super simple, no sugar added,
Right.
just corn and water used to process it and then toast it up. Apparently the texture was very, very bad back in the day, like not the same sort of like delightful crunch we have today.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
It was really, really difficult to
I
eat.
can imagine.
But there were sort of results that people had because they started switching from eating massive amounts of meat and cream and
Right.
sugar for every meal. Once they started swapping in something that was like more of a whole grain, more of a basic thing for one of their meals,
Uh-huh.
it started to balance out diets a little bit more.
Right.
And so it also fit into something that was changing around that time, which was a convenience breakfast. People wanted something that was really fast and easy, that was shelf stable, that could fit in our new stores that we had. And so he created basically the line, the category of cereals was like
Right.
sort of birthed from this movement. His brother also started his own cereal company. One of his assistants started Post with grape nuts. Um,
Huh.
so everywhere, kind of like in that area, starts creating really basic grain based meals
Hmm.
that are designed not just to make your tummy feel better, but to make you a more law abiding, even keeled, um, like
Yeah.
less upset person. And when you're not upset, you don't have to engage in non reproductive sex, and you don't have to sort of like engage in violence or be distracted from your like
Right.
more logical, natural higher self.
Uh-huh. So did was there a reported decrease or um, refocusing of masturbatory activity in the United States around this time, or do we have? Is there a correlation there?
I can't tell you anything about that. What I can tell you is that history basically took the cereal and left the masturbation stuff in the dust, because his brother and
Uh,
the Post Company both did the thing that Dr. Kellogg was extremely against, which was that they
uh,
started adding back in things like sugar.
yeah, sugar. Yeah, exactly.
And so they started adding sugar, and people loved it, and it kept everything that else that they still had some whole grains in there a lot
Uh,
of times,
sure.
but it was more palatable, and then it still was like lifestyle wise super fun, like really
Yeah,
easy way to get food.
yeah. And grape nuts was mostly rocks and maybe a little dusting of sugar.
Yeah, I really never understood grape nuts, and I didn't do a bunch of deep dive into that, but like
Yeah, it's okay.
maybe
That's
it was just like originally it was like sweetened with grape juice would be
maybe.
my guess.
Or did they just like really bake grape seeds and try to sell it as a cereal? Because I could see how there's a
Hmm.
connection there.
Yeah.